Welcome to the Forgotten Narrator. There is a kind of silence in the void, an absence of morality, of empathy, of restraint. It echoes through the blackened forges of the dark Mechanicum, where machines scream and flesh begs and the line between living and dead is a cruel joke. Imagine walking into a cathedral, built from bone and brass, hearing the choir sing in binary screams, and watching a servitor, once a human being, crawl across the floor with limbs replaced by rusting tools, eyes plucked and replaced with glowing sensors, and a mouth sutured shut to silence its agony. This is not science. This is not war. This is desecration masquerading as creation. To understand the monsters of the dark Mechanicum, you have to first understand what was lost. There was once an order, however dogmatic, within the machine cult. The Omnissiah demanded reverence, logic, structure. But when Mars fell to chaos during the Horus Heresy, those boundaries shattered, and into that breach flooded an ecstasy of invention freed from any ethical chain. The servants of the dark Mechanicum no longer build for function. They build for worship, for fear, for domination. And at the heart of their nightmarish industry lies the Servitor, no longer a tool but a canvas for every blasphemy they can imagine. The fall of the Mechanicum was not a moment. It was a slow corruption, an infection of ideology and spirit that festered beneath the surface of Martian culture for millennia. When Horus extended his hand, offering not just alliance but liberation from the chains of the Emperor and the dogmatic priests of Terra, many tech priests did not hesitate. They were already on the edge, chafing under the contradictions of worshipping a machine god while serving a flesh and blood emperor. The promise of chaos was seductive, not because it offered power, but because it offered freedom from restraint. It promised evolution beyond limits. It whispered that pain and madness were tools, not afflictions. And so the dark Mechanicum was born, not in fire, but in revelation. The tragedy is that these were not fools or madmen, not at first. These were the brightest minds of the Adeptus Mechanicus, Magos biologists, Logi architects, master artisans of steel and data. But when they cast off the false Omnissiah, they did not become nothing. They became something else, something unchained. The boundaries between machine and soul dissolved. The tech heresy began with small experiments, implanting demonic ichor into power sources, allowing warp-suggested code to influence design. But quickly, these experiments escalated. Machines no longer needed logic. They responded to ritual, to sacrifice, to prayer. And flesh could be rewritten. In these newly born forge worlds, servitors were no longer lobotomized criminals built to push a wheel or clean a corridor. They became objects of artistic obsession. Some tech priests began sculpting servitors like Baroque statues, writhing with extra limbs, studded with relics, humming sacred hymns distorted through cracked vox emitters. Others used them as test subjects in warp-flesh fusion, mixing the biological essence of daemons with once human hosts, seeing what combinations of agony and power could be made stable. Stability, though, was rarely the point. It was the process that mattered, the offering, the transformation, the creative act. They say servitors do not scream, but within the forges of the dark Mechanicum, they do. Some are designed to scream. Some are constructed to emit a continuous hymn of pain, their vocal cords removed and replaced with vocalizers tuned to the frequencies of madness. Their suffering is part of the function, pain as power, agony as energy. These are not malfunctions. These are design choices. Perhaps the most horrifying truth is that to the dark Mechanicum, these creations are beautiful. Each servitor, no matter how grotesque, is a reflection of the Magos who made it. Some are delicate and subtle, an extra eye hidden beneath translucent skin, a nerve cluster engineered to respond to psychic flux. Others are brutalist in design, steel claws for hands, torsos split open to house twin flamers, tracked lower halves grinding over skull-littered stone. But all are works of love, of dark worship, of genius turned utterly inward. These are not errors of technology, they are masterpieces. The Imperium calls them monsters, abominations. But to their creators, they are children, tools, soldiers, offerings. Some are named, some are given rituals. Many are built with a lifespan measured in minutes, only long enough to scream their devotion as they charge into the enemy, strapped with unstable warp engines or virus bombs made of liquefied daemons. These are not expendable, they are sacred. The act of creation is itself an act of faith. The true horror of the Dark Mechanicum's servitor making lies in what it says about their view of humanity. Flesh is not a vessel to be honored. It is a resource to be mined, refined, and repurposed. Every bone is a lever, every nerve a wire, every scream a data point. They do not mourn the loss of self, the erasure of identity. They revel in it. They believe they are freeing their creations from the tyranny of the soul. And all of this, the screams, the rituals, the endless forge work, is only the beginning. For in the hands of the Dark Mechanicum, the Servitor is not the end goal. It is the base unit, the blank slate, the opening verse in a hymn of metal and madness that only gets louder, darker, and more unspeakable as it goes. When the Imperium first created servitors, they were blunt instruments, functional amalgamations of human remains and mechanical components. Designed for obedience, stripped of autonomy, they served menial roles across the galaxy. But in the hands of the Dark Mechanicum, that simple utilitarian concept became a palette for horror. They took the Servitor and reimagined it entirely, not as a tool but as an extension of their will, their blasphemous creativity, and their devotion to chaos. They elevated the Servitor from a degraded slave to a walking sermon in rust and pain. To understand the Dark Mechanicum's reimagining, you have to abandon the logic of Imperial design. In the Imperium, a combat servitor is created to fight. A maintenance servitor is created to maintain. But within the warp-tainted forges, purpose is secondary to expression. The line between roles blurs and bleeds. A servitor may be equipped with mining claws and plasma cutters, but these same tools can be used to flay flesh, crack open ceramite, or gouge sigils into stone. Every appendage is multi-purpose. Every augmentation is ritualized. There are no standard units. There are only expressions of function born through sacred disfigurement. The first key transformation is in material philosophy. The Dark Mechanicum does not limit itself to metal incogitators. Bone, sinew, blood vessels, demonic ichor, and even crystallized warp matter are woven into their creations. Servitors are often more biological than mechanical, not because of necessity, but because of sacramental intent. To them, living tissue is not weak, it is mutable. Flesh can warp under the right chance. It can be reprogrammed, grown in vat chapels, and twisted into Baroque shapes the Emperor's tech adepts would consider sins. They do not fear the breakdown of organic matter. They expect it, and they design for it. Secondly, the role of the mind is inverted. Where the Imperium lobotomizes its servitors to silence rebellion, the Dark Mechanicum reshapes consciousness. Some servitors retain fractured memories, reliving their past lives in corrupted loops that make them scream or sing while idle. Others are implanted with artificial personalities, false constructs that repeat creeds or narrate battles as they unfold. There are cases where a servitor is split into multiple personas, its mind compartmentalized so that each limb moves independently, guided by a different subroutine. Madness is not a flaw, it is baked into the circuitry. Servitors of the Dark Mechanicum do not simply serve, they perform. Ritual is embedded in their behavior. A maintenance servitor might recite invocations while adjusting warp engines. A combat unit may twitch in rhythmic spasms before battle, marking itself with sparks of energy that leave brands across its own chest. These actions are more than affectations, they are programming, written in the language of belief and fear. Function is not enough, worship must be encoded in every cycle. There are also cultural dimensions to these constructs. Different factions within the Dark Mechanicum create in wildly varied ways. Some favor the mechanical, building lumbering war servitors with tank treads and Lascanan arms, their voices replaced with klaxon roars. Others create horrors of flesh, servo beasts with 6 legs, eyes that weep boiling oil, and brains housed in liquid tanks stitched into their own torsos. The arch-heretic of Zacharios VII is said to have crafted an entire cast of musical servitors, each engineered to produce screams in precise harmonic frequencies that resonate with the warp and summon small demonic entities. Even in this chaos, there is hierarchy. Not all servitors are equal. Some are disposable. Their very creation is a sacrifice, a single-use hymn made flesh. Others are elevated, given names, embedded with kill tallies, treated as relics. These elite servitors are more than tools. They are avatars of the Forgemaster's will. Their construction is months-long, involving rituals, offerings, and even the grafting of forbidden Xenos components. They may possess rudimentary will, guided not by AI, long since banned, but by demonic intelligences that whisper through their circuitry. Some of these servitors have survived centuries, passed down through generations of heretics, like cursed family heirlooms. And perhaps most disturbingly, the boundary between servitor and daemon engine has blurred. In the Dark Mechanicum, the servitor is not just the beginning, it is the testbed, the proof of concept. A successful servitor template may evolve, may be gifted with greater components, even with sentience. Some become something else entirely, but all begin as that first sin, flesh and machine joined in agony. This is how the Dark Mechanicum creates monsters, not by accident, not through malfunction, but by intent. They have taken the most basic construct in Imperial design and redefined it as a sacred right. Servitors are no longer the forgotten laborers of industry. They are sermons of pain, walking psalms to the ruinous powers, and the first step toward a deeper, darker perfection. In the fire-wreathed battlefields of the galaxy, where bolter shells scream and daemons claw through reality, few sights chill the blood, like a combat servitor of the Dark Mechanicum. These are not mere machines of war. They are desecrations in motion, monstrous amalgamations of flesh, metal, and demonic influence, forged not only for destruction but for spectacle. Where the Imperium deploys battle servitors with cold efficiency, the Dark Mechanicum unleashes theirs with theatrical brutality. Every kill is a ritual, every movement a desecration, every scream, whether from the victim or the servitor itself, is an offering. The range of combat servitors the Dark Mechanicum produces defies categorization. They do not adhere to classes or models. Each is a unique reflection of its creator's desires, bound only by the resources available and the depth of madness embraced. Some are towering monstrosities, grafted with rotary cannons where arms once were, hydraulic limbs coiling like serpents, faces replaced with vox speakers blaring corrupted canticles. Others are deceptively lithe, quadrupeds that skitter on blade-tipped limbs, exhaling gasps of superheated air, their minds so fragmented they can only perceive movement and pain. One of the most grotesque innovations lies in the concept of perpetual combat. Unlike their Imperial counterparts, many of these servitors are designed to regenerate. Flesh reknits around metal, bone refuses under arcane fields, and broken limbs are replaced mid-battle by self-replicating nanoflesh. These systems are not purely technological. They are often guided by demonic forces bound within the servitor's systems. The machine spirit is dead. In its place is a shrieking entity of war, driving the construct forward no matter the damage. Weapon integration is another frontier of perverse brilliance. Standard templates are shunned. Instead, weapons are often chosen for thematic or symbolic reasons. A servitor created in honor of Khorne might bear chain axes fused directly into its elbows, each swing powered by sacrificial hydraulics pulsing with recycled blood. Another, designed by a warsmith obsessed with sound, may fire sonic blasts from a mouth grafted with high-frequency emitters, the very noise capable of liquefying organs. Some are even fitted with misery cannons, devices that don't kill, but induce such intense agony that victims claw at their own throats, begging for death. There are accounts of servitors that do not kill their prey at all, but immobilize them, paralyzing toxins, webbing sprays, neural disruptors, so that they may be harvested alive, screaming, as trophies or raw material. Some combat servitors come equipped with containment sarcophagi on their backs, capturing the fallen for later use in the forges. In this way, they are not just instruments of war, but of logistics, gatherers of flesh and spirit for future corruption. Even their movement is horrifying. While Imperial servitors lurch or march, Dark Mechanicum war constructs may hover unnaturally, legs twitching beneath them like broken branches. Others gallop on all fours with human hands still attached to their knees, dragging along bits of what they once were. Some leave trails of mutagenic slime in their wake, a byproduct of their corrupted reactors or demonic bile vents. It is not uncommon for these trails to spawn lesser daemons or twisted life forms in their wake, turning battlefields into gardens of abomination. Their deployment methods are equally theatrical. Many are dropped directly from orbit in sealed tune pods, their containment runes melting as they fall, so that by the time they crash into enemy lines, they are already awake and screaming. Others are teleported in waves, bound in shackles of burning hex iron that melt upon arrival, releasing them like attack dogs off the leash. There are even reports of some being launched via daemon-powered artillery, howling through the sky like meteoric curses. And then, of course, there are the warbands that treat their combat servitors as pets. They paint them in sacrificial blood, feed them warp-mutated carrion, and whisper to them in dark tongues. These servitors develop tendencies. They recognize their handlers, they respond to stimuli. Some even perform rituals before battle, self-flagellation, machine oil ablutions, or rhythmic stamping that seems to resonate with the fabric of reality itself. Perhaps the most horrifying class are the sacrificial berserkers. These are constructs with failsafes designed not to protect them, but to ensure they die. They are packed with volatile warp cores, unstable plasma engines, or caged daemons desperate to escape. When activated, they charge into enemy formations not for the kill but for the detonation. Their deaths are cataclysms, cities leveled, psychers torn apart by the unleashed entities. These servitors are not errors of containment, they are designed to die in fury. To the Imperium, the sight of a dark Mechanicum combat servitor is a warning that the enemy they face does not seek victory through tactics, but through horror. It is not enough to kill. The dark Mechanicum must instill fear. They must demonstrate their mastery over flesh and steel. And in every twisted limb, every blood-wet blade, every howling charge, that message is carved deep into the souls of those who survive the encounter, if any do. There exists a certain kind of silence that precedes psychic devastation, not the calm before a storm, but a hush pulled from the warp itself, thick with dread and inevitability. That silence is often broken not by daemons nor sorcerers, but by the warped hum of psyker servitors, flesh-bound conduits of the dark Mechanicum, minds enslaved and hollowed, but still burning with unnatural power. These are not sanctioned psychers shackled for imperial use. These are the cast-offs, the rogue astropaths, the broken witches of shattered worlds, and worse, those born in the warp's shadow, caught and reformed into something even the black ships dare not imagine. The dark Mechanicum has no scruples about the soul, and so their exploitation of psychers reaches depths the Imperium dares not probe. At the heart of their philosophy lies an idea both cruel and elegant, that the human mind is the most mutable component in creation, especially when saturated with warp potential. Psychers are harvested like crops. On daemon-scarred worlds and captured void hulks, they are chained, branded, and mentally broken before being reduced to parts. The goal is not annihilation, it is reconstruction. The dark Mechanicum doesn't want the psycher's will. They want its echo, its residue, its burn. One of the most insidious forms is the null core servitor, a psycher whose warp potential has been artificially throttled, chemically dulled, then focused through surgically embedded null rods and resonance cages. These constructs emit an aura of psychic deadness, akin to a soulless void. They are deployed not to fight, but to extinguish the warp presence of enemy psychers and demons. Their presence is often disorienting to Imperial forces, causing sanctioned psychers to convulse, lose control, or simply fall dead in silent terror. The worst part? These servitors are often still aware, their minds screaming within reinforced neural casings, denied even the relief of madness. On the opposite end are the flux chanters, servitors whose psychic gifts are amplified rather than suppressed. Their skulls are hollowed to make space for warp nodes and binding crystals. Their tongues are replaced with vibrating rune filaments that chant liturgies directly into the warp, each syllable carrying destructive potential. They do not cast psychic powers in the traditional sense. They evoke warp phenomena, rains of fire, reality fractures, localized gravity inversions. But their use is unstable. Many die after a single deployment, their bodies unraveling into boiling mist or shattering under the stress of their own invocations. Some magi consider this desirable, a perfect offering to the warp, self-consuming and glorious. There are also the warp splice servitors, used in rituals of summoning and reality manipulation. These constructs are permanently embedded into demon forges or chaos temples, their brains wired into ritual machines, their bodies fused to altars of brass and bone. They serve as living circuit points through which warp energy flows, psychic routers if you will. When activated, they channel and distribute warp energy across ritual lattices, enabling the summoning of entities far beyond what a mortal sorcerer could control. They do not speak. They feel. And through their agony, the gods respond. A rarer and more perverse type is the Echo Shell, a psyker servitor deliberately filled with fragmented warp entities. These creatures are partially possessed but stabilized by suppressive algorithms and neural inhibitors. Their minds are a battleground, hosting the screams of multiple demons at once, all contained within a single shell of bone and steel. In battle, they emit reality-warping pulses, time loops, illusory terrain, even false images of enemy units. It is said some can create echoes of themselves, temporary doppelgangers that confuse and distract the foe before vanishing in showers of blood and static. But these servitors are short-lived. Either the machine breaks, or the demons win. More horrific still are the Oracle Wombs. These are not battlefield units, but living psychic databases grown in crypt forges, seeded with the brains of powerful psychers. Their bodies are immobile, suspended in tanks or cradled within towers of bone circuitry. They are used to predict warp tides, identify vulnerabilities in real space, or even glimpse fragments of the future. But such sight comes at a price. The Oracle Wombs are in constant agony, their thoughts flooded with potential timelines and demonic whispers. Their screams are considered valuable data. They are never silenced. Among the most abominable uses, however, is the servitorization of failed daemon hosts. When an attempt to bind a daemon goes wrong, and it often does, the resulting psychically shattered body may still be salvaged. These constructs, known as husk relays, are little more than puppets animated by psychic residue. They are fitted with amplifiers and used to broadcast psychic interference across battlefields. Their bodies twitch, speak in reverse, or sing in dead languages. Some emit anti-signal fields that blind astropathic communication or distort vox transmissions with screams from the warp. They are not alive, nor truly dead. They simply function, and that is enough for the Dark Mechanicum. Ultimately, the Psyker Servitor is not just a weapon of war, it is a philosophical statement. To the Dark Mechanicum, the mind is just one more component. The soul is circuitry. The warp is a tool. And if a person is born with the ability to touch that tool, then that person is raw material, nothing more. What makes these constructs so terrifying is not just their power, but the implications behind them. That there are no limits, no ethics, no final boundary between man, machine, and madness. Only the screaming continuum. There is a point beyond madness where creation becomes possession. Not merely in spirit, but in the most literal sense. In the grim crucibles of the Dark Mechanicum, servitors are not just imbued with corrupted purpose. Some are designed from conception to be hosts. Hosts not for data or commands or binary logic, but for demons. These are not accidental possessions. These are deliberate, calculated integrations where flesh, machine, and warp entity merge into one coherent, if abominable, form. They are the daemon-integrated servitors, and they represent the darkest frontier of biomechanical heresy. The principle is grotesquely elegant. Where a normal daemon host binds a warp entity within a living body, the Dark Mechanicum takes it further. They engineer the vessel for the daemon. They design bodies with internalized hexagrammic lattices, cages of black iron laced with soul steel, neurological matrices capable of buffering the raw psychic voltage of a bound creature. It is not just possession, it is symbiosis. The daemon is not trapped in an unwilling host, but given a stage. The servitor is not overrun, but constructed with neural compromises that allow the entity to pilot the body without destroying it, at least for a time. These constructs are often created during complex rites involving sacrificial servitors, mass chanting, and warp script data fed into cogitator-sealed grimoires. The process begins with what the heretics call chassis sanctification, a blend of mechanical reinforcement and warp consecration. Every joint, every circuit, every sinew must be stress-tested against psychic backlash. Many prototypes are consumed instantly, either vaporized by daemon fire or inverted into howling entropy knots. But those that survive are hardened. They develop resistance. Some begin twitching before the ritual even begins, reacting to demonic presence like lodestones to lightning. The daemons themselves are not random. They are chosen, bartered for, or summoned by name. The Dark Mechanicum tracks their warp signatures like chemists track volatile compounds. Lesser daemons are used for mass production units, basic aggression, enhanced strength, localized reality distortion. Greater demons or named entities are saved for elite constructs. These become not just weapons, but avatars of their Forge Lord's ambition. Their bodies may be sculpted in the daemon's image, horned, plated, smoke-wreathed, yet still bear the clear marks of mechanical architecture. Power conduits, servo limbs, exoframes humming with soul-bound reactors. Control is always temporary. Even the most finely tuned daemon servitor begins to break down over time. The daemon exerts pressure, seeks loopholes in its bindings, exploits logic gaps in the code litanies that restrain it. Some break free violently, consuming their own servitor bodies in explosive psychic tantrums. Others dissolve more subtly, coherency fracturing until the construct becomes a babbling, twitching echo of its former function. But even these failures are not discarded. They are studied, reabsorbed, repurposed into new experiments. There are entire divisions of the Dark Mechanicum dedicated to perfecting the symbiotic daemon machine. The Forge of Silent Screams, for instance, crafts constructs called echo-bound, servitors whose sensory inputs are overridden by demonic perception. They see not with eyes, but with warp sight, targeting souls instead of heat or motion. They move unpredictably, reacting to intent rather than action. Fighting them is like battling a nightmare that knows your fear before you do. Some are designed not for combat, but for infiltration. These constructs are clad in flesh that seems human at first glance, their demonic presence suppressed beneath ritualized emotion mimetics. They can pass for wounded soldiers, derelict tech priests, or captured civilians, until they unleash the horrors within. There are recorded instances of such servitors entering imperial bastions under false pretenses, only to explode in storms of demonic flame once deep inside, leaving entire regiments incinerated or worse, turned. But among the most feared are the symphonic wretches, daemon-integrated servitors that channel their entity's essence through sound. They emit sonics that fracture matter, disorient enemies, or drive mortals mad with warped harmonics. The daemons housed within them do not speak in words, but in frequencies. Languages of pain and ecstasy layered over machine-born audio systems. Some of these creatures are said to hum even in death, their final tones reverberating across dimensions like a cursed lullaby. Perhaps the most grotesque examples are the containment choirs, groups of daemon servitors linked together through neural latticework, forming a collective mind shared by multiple bound entities. These formations act in eerie synchronicity. Speaking in chorused voices, their movements choreographed like rituals in motion. When deployed, they form ritual circles, drawing demonic energy into reality through synchronized action. Entire cities have been consumed by their performances. The ethical void here is staggering, even by the standards of the Dark Mechanicum. These are not just constructs. They are sacrifices in motion, engineered to endure agony, corruption, and eventual annihilation in service to higher ambition. And yet, in these horrific acts, the Dark Mechanicum sees beauty. They believe they are perfecting the union of matter and immaterium, creating a new form of life that is neither mortal nor daemon, but something utterly other. What they create in these daemon-integrated servitors is not just a weapon. It is a philosophical triumph, a statement that the laws of flesh and soul are no longer barriers, only puzzles. And in solving them, the Dark Mechanicum ascends, dragging its creations in the universe ever deeper into chaos. Chains rattle in the subvaults of hellforges, not from restraint, but from industry. Here, in the choking dark beneath corrupted manufactorums, the raw material for the Dark Mechanicum servitors is kept, living, breathing, suffering. They are not volunteers. They are not chosen. They are the harvest, prisoners of war, failed cultists, hive scum, lost pilgrims, even captured Astartes. Any body, any soul, any mind that can be repurposed into something useful is dragged into the flesh harvest, where identity is peeled away like skin, and humanity is reduced to data and sinew. The flesh harvest begins long before the surgery. The Dark Mechanicum does not simply throw bodies onto operating slabs. Every victim is scanned, analyzed, categorized. Genetic compatibility is assessed. Psychic potential is gauged. Structural integrity is rated. This is not chaos without order. It is chaos driven by cold calculus. Certain forge fanes favor specific builds. A brawny ganger from Necromunda might be ideal for heavy lift servitor units. A lithe Voidborn may be better suited for infiltration. Even deformities are seen as potential. an extra limb, a twin brain stem, a vestigial organ. These are advantages in the right hands. Once selected, the process of deconstruction begins. Flesh is not simply removed, it is interpreted. Limbs are restructured, often while the subject remains conscious, because pain yields data. The nervous system is mapped through suffering, its reactions recorded and modeled to optimize servitor feedback loops. Eyes are removed not just for sensor installation, but because the trauma of removal stimulates neuroplasticity, making the brain more pliable for later reprogramming. Organs are removed, shifted, replaced. Nothing is wasted. Even screams are sometimes captured as input for Vocaloid servitor units, repurposing terror into interface sound banks. Captured psychers are treated with particular reverence and revulsion. Their bodies are sometimes kept intact, but their minds are fragmented through ritual torture, their memories stripped and remixed into prophetic data. Some are used to seed other servitors, their blood used to inscribe warp-reactive runes onto circuit boards, or their spinal fluid injected into data spirals to increase receptivity to chaotic frequencies. In this way, one psyker's death can birth dozens of warp-sensitive constructs. These servitors are not simply tainted, they are designed to resonate with demonic whispers. Captured Astartes, when found, are considered prizes beyond measure. The Dark Mechanicum reveres their gene-forged flesh, not as sacred, but as premium stock. Their bodies resist degradation. Their organs offer redundancy. Some are kept alive during their transformation, forced to witness their desecration, their implants ripped out or corrupted, their pride weaponized. There are even accounts of servitors crafted from multiple Astartes at once, limbs from one, torsos from another, brains fused together to create multi-node combat processors. These constructs are deployed against the Imperium as weapons of mockery, sons of the Emperor turned into parodies of loyalty, animated by hate and machine code. But not all raw materials are captured in battle. Many are bred. On certain forge worlds, the Dark Mechanicum maintains wombs of steel, industrial-scale gene farms where human bodies are grown for no purpose other than servitor integration. These bodies are sometimes cloned, sometimes vat-grown from harvested tissue, sometimes crafted from donor scraps sewn together by autoserfs. They are born mindless, or nearly so, their brains simplified for easier overwrite. These meat things never speak, never dream, never even see the light. They are processed directly into assembly lines, filed, flayed, fused, and forgotten. Some heretics go further still, refusing human-based material entirely. They create hybrid stocks, human-animal fusions, vat-grown xenos hybrids, or flesh-born from warp-infected ecosystems. The resulting servitors are unstable, often grotesque beyond reason, but sometimes uniquely useful. A servitor made from a tyrannid human hybrid might metabolize faster. One born from a demonic deer-like creature may possess senses beyond mortal range. These aberrations are difficult to control. But then again, control is not always the goal. Chaos rewards unpredictability when it serves the right master. Throughout all of this, the central horror is not in the violence, but the purpose. The Dark Mechanicum does not hate the flesh it harvests. It does not do this for pleasure. It does it for necessity, for belief. To them, suffering is a forge, just as fire and steel are. They refine the raw stuff of humanity into something more useful, more pliable, more sacred. Each scream is a hammer blow, each tear a drop of oil. And even after the process is complete, some memory of the original victim may remain. A twitch, a whispered phrase, a flinch when approached from behind. The servitor does not understand these echoes, but the heretic does. It is not a flaw, it is a signature. Proof that something was sacrificed, that something once human was transfigured. And in that transformation, the Dark Mechanicum sees divinity. To the Dark Mechanicum, the term cybernetics is laughably quaint. It implies limitation, order, functionality bound by logic and material constraints. But in the depths of the warp forges, where the air tastes of copper and screams, something far more obscene has emerged. Bioengines. They are not cybernetics, not even in the twisted sense the Mechanicus once knew. They are flesh-born machines, constructed, not augmented, organically grown yet mechanically purposed. These are not humans who have been turned into tools. These are tools birthed as flesh, never meant to be anything else. Imagine a servitor that was never human, that was conceived in a vat of nutrient gel, grown with a pre-written code laced into its genetic helix. bred to feel no pain, to question nothing, to act as a limb of its creator. These bioengines do not have spines reinforced with metal. They are grown with alloy bone composites. Their muscles are synthetic sinew interlaced with warp-reactive fibers. Their skin, if they have it, is grown to specific hardness levels, sometimes scaled, sometimes translucent, sometimes embedded with photoreceptors. They are machines built out of flesh, and every inch of them is calculated for a purpose far removed from anything nature or humanity ever intended. Many of these horrors begin life in massive gene vats that hum with dark energy, guarded by hooded heretics who speak to them in cooing machine language, as if nurturing a newborn. Each vat is tuned to a different function. Some grow crawler units with multiple limbs and reinforced skulls meant for breaching. Others birth flight-capable biodrones, winged horrors with echolocative organs replacing eyes and lungs filled with acidic gas. The most advanced vats grow multipurpose units with modular limbs, capable of adapting mid-mission by reabsorbing biomass and regrowing new appendages on command. Their minds are not blank, but they are not minds in the traditional sense. Most bioengines are grown with simplified brains, engineered only for reflex, command reception, and sensory interpretation. But others are more advanced, infused with artificially evolved neural clusters that allow for limited decision-making, emotional mimicry, or even pain processing. Some heretics believe this makes them more effective. Pain sharpens instincts, even in born servitors. Others simply enjoy the illusion of life in their creations. A few bioengines even mimic human expressions, not to communicate, but to disorient their enemies, to smile before they kill. The integration of warp-infused tissue is what elevates the bioengine from grotesque biology to genuine techno-sorcery. Flesh is laced with daemon ichor, blood replaced with alchemically charged fluids that glow with a sickly hue. Some units are capable of spontaneous mutation during combat, sprouting claws, growing sensory stalks, or erupting with spines in response to threat stimuli. These are not failures. They are features. The heretics responsible build in mutability as a combat advantage, embracing the chaos of the warp as a design principle. There are specific subclasses of bioengines so monstrous they defy simple categorization. The Scream Towers, for instance, are grown as stationary battlefield emitters, towering flesh pylons with vocal cords large enough to shake the ground, emitting subsonic vibrations that rupture organs or disrupt machine signals. Their spines are latticed with signal dishes made of bone and tendon, and their minds consist of a single overriding directive: sing until death. Another subclass, the Flayer Buds, are small, rapidly gestating biominds grown in clusters. When disturbed, they explode in a bloom of caustic limbs and slicing tendrils, reducing everything nearby to ragged mulch. Transport units, too, have been birthed rather than built. The flesh caravans are massive slug-like creatures whose backs are ridged with harnesses and chitinous armor, capable of carrying troops through warp-ravaged terrain. Inside their bodies are nutrient sacs, air-purifying nodules, and even gestation chambers where new servitor components are grown mid-journey. Some warbands of the Dark Mechanicum consider them sacred beasts, feeding them the bodies of the slain as both fuel and sacrifice. More insidious are the infiltration strains, bioengines grown to appear human, their skin indistinguishable from a citizen's, their movements uncannily precise. These constructs are inserted into populations as sleepers, activated by signal or phrase, at which point their flesh unfurls into whips, claws, or other nightmarish tools. Some remain dormant for years, their creators long dead, waiting for a command that may never come. But in the warp's time-twisted logic, eventually, everything returns. What unites all bioengines is the absence of mercy. They do not possess humanity. They were never human. Their creators do not weep for them because they do not die. They expire, they rupture, they conclude. And when they do, they are harvested, their biomass recycled into new forms. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is mourned. To the Dark Mechanicum, the bioengine is not just a step forward, it is a revolution. It proves that metal is not the only path to perfection. That machine logic can be written in genes as easily as in code. That war is best fought with life that was never alive in the first place. These creations do not mark a divergence from technology. They are the final convergence of biology and machine, guided by madness, shaped by the warp, and unleashed upon a galaxy already screaming. Within every servitor is a whisper of memory, a sliver of thought, a twitch of identity that was supposed to be erased. But the Dark Mechanicum does not seek true erasure, it seeks control. And nowhere is that control more perverse, more total, than in the manipulation of the servitor cortex. This is not merely programming, it is the deliberate twisting of the mind's architecture. The cortex is the throne of obedience, the altar of torment, and the mirror into which the soul stares and forgets itself. Here, within the grain of gray matter and silicon threads, the heretic inscribes a new reality. A standard imperial servitor has a cortex implant that suppresses higher functions, lobotomized to remove fear, curiosity, identity. But for the Dark Mechanicum, this is a waste. Why destroy what you can rewrite? They keep much of the original brain intact, not out of mercy, but because a whole mind offers more control options. The more complex the network, the richer the programming. They don't eliminate pain, they map it, redefine it, link it to reward triggers. Fear is not suppressed, it is redirected, weaponized, made into a navigational tool. Servitors flinch from silence, charge towards screaming. They associate light with memory, memory with command. At the center of this heretical manipulation is a technology known only as neural lace architecture. It is not merely an implant, it is a web that wraps the brainstem, binding flesh to a living logic lattice. This structure allows the heretic to rewrite emotional responses. A servitor can be trained to feel elation when dismembering a foe, shame when idle, terror when disobeying an order. And these feelings are not abstract. They are enforced chemically and electroneurally, delivered through biosynthetic glands wired into the brain's pleasure centers. Even a twitch of rebellion results in agony, confusion, nausea. Over time, the mind collapses inward, seeking only obedience as a means of peace. Some dark magi go further still, crafting persona overlays, false identities uploaded into the cortex to override the original personality. These overlays can mimic specific people, roles, or behavioral patterns. A servitor might believe it is a loyal guardsman, a tech priest, or even a family member of the target it is about to kill. The illusion is never perfect, but it doesn't have to be. Confusion is a weapon, emotional manipulation is a tool, and if the overlay begins to fracture mid-operation, the resulting psychosis only makes the servitor more dangerous, less predictable, more violent. Memory itself is treated as a software module. Heretics extract memories from captured individuals and splice them into new servitors, creating what they call reflex cores. A servitor trained with the battle instincts of a veteran Astartes may never have held a weapon before, but its reflexes will be perfect. Others are given the memories of tortured psychers, not to empower them, but to simulate psychic behavior. Screaming random visions, repeating apocalyptic prophecies, or mimicking the gestures of warp users to confuse the enemy. These are not functional powers, they are psychological warfare. More disturbing still are the cognitive mirrors. Servitors whose brains are tethered to external data spirals or living hosts. Some are wired into heretic command nodes, their thoughts shaped by the will of a distant overseer who feels through them like a puppet master. Others are networked together in cortical swarms, functioning as a hive mind, sharing experiences in real time, adjusting their behavior as a group. These clusters can respond with terrifying coordination, attacking from multiple vectors, sacrificing units for maximum effect, even feigning disarray to draw the enemy into traps. Of course, this level of manipulation often results in cognitive collapse. Brains are not built for this. Neural architecture can degrade, fragment, corrupt. But this, too, is anticipated. Servitors are equipped with fail-safes, either to purge corrupted data through neural firewalls or to self-terminate in a cascade of seizures and internal overloads. Some are designed to explode when their minds shatter, converting a mental breakdown into a physical cataclysm. Even death becomes function. In rare and blasphemous cases, the Dark Mechanicum will resurrect a servitor, recovering the cortex post-destruction, reanimating the remains with daemon-bound processors. These revenant units are known as echo wraiths, and they retain shadow memories of their former lives. They often speak in riddles, laugh at inappropriate times, or relive old traumas mid-combat. Whether this is deliberate or a glitch is a matter of doctrinal debate. Some heretics believe the soul cannot truly be deleted, only suppressed. Others embrace the echoes as proof of their creation's spiritual resilience. Throughout all of this, there is one principle that defines Dark Mechanicum Cortex design: ownership. The Servitor is not merely controlled, it is inhabited. The heretic's will is not imposed from without, but etched into the folds of the brain, built into the subconscious reflexes, breathed into every thought. Obedience is not a choice, it is the only remaining instinct. Every twitch, every decision, every flicker of recognition is a prayer to its master. And the greatest heresy? Some of them remember. Not much, not clearly. A flash of a name, a place, a color, a child's face. These fragments do not cause rebellion, they cause devotion. The Servitor clings to them like relics, like sacred scripture. They are reinterpreted, recontextualized, repurposed into myths. In this way, even memory becomes a weapon, and identity is not erased. It is rewritten, reshaped, reborn in chains. The forge worlds of the Dark Mechanicum are not factories. They are living nightmares, churning cathedrals of agony and ambition, suspended between dimensions where reality twists and industry howls. These places are not merely the source of weapons and constructs. They are acts of devotion, ritualized landscapes built not to manufacture, but to worship through creation. Every bolt driven into flesh, every scream echoing through the smog-choked skies, every servitor born from the iron wombs is a hymn sung to chaos in the language of blood and steel. This is where monsters are made, not in secret, not in shame, but in celebration. To walk through such a world, if such a thing were even survivable, is to witness a realm sculpted by blasphemy. The air is heavy with toxic fogs, thickened by warp taint, clouds that breathe and scream, sometimes raining acid, sometimes blood. The very ground pulses with machine rhythms, groaning beneath your feet as if it resents your presence. Flesh grows from vents where coolant once spilled. Spires of twisted architecture reach into the sky like fingers trying to claw their way into the materium. Some of these structures are grown, not built. Vast towers of bone, metal, and sinew, where neural conduits writhe like worms across living walls. Within these cities of torment, the Servitor production lines are both terrifyingly efficient and aesthetically deranged. Assembly lines stretch for kilometers, lit by the flicker of warp fires and the flaring of arcane plasma forges. Here, organic hosts hang from hooks and slow-moving conveyors, their bodies stripped, dissected, rewired. Some scream, others chant. A few are drugged into euphoria, believing they are ascending to machine godhood. Their minds are shattered, rewritten, reduced to binary pulses of purpose. Each stage of the assembly line is an act of transformation. One chamber specializes in limb replacement, servo limbs grafted with crude precision, stitched to nerve clusters that have been chemically enhanced to prevent rejection. Another room is a pit of cranial work, where skulls are sawed open and cortex implants hammered in with symbolic nails etched with demonic sigils. Blood sluices across the floor in carefully designed grooves, not for drainage, but for ritual geometry. The gore feeds patterns, activates latent glyphs, calls attention from the warp. Machine priests walk the lines, chanting binaric prayers warped into howling code. They do not oversee the process in a technical sense, they participate in it. Their mechanical limbs adjusting tools mid-operation, their voices triggering neurochemical surges in the half-alive things beneath them. In one forged spire, the overseer doesn't use words at all. He sings, and the frequency of his voice drives servitor brains into compliance, like a shepherd guiding a flock of mindless sheep across a field of razors. Perhaps the most disturbing element of these forges is the complete lack of division between industry and religion. Where in the Imperium, a machine spirit is appeased through rites to ensure function, the Dark Mechanicum performs rites to ensure devotion. Servitors are not merely checked for operational capacity, they are blessed, cursed, branded with sigils that glow when exposed to sin. Some are carved with phrases in dark tongue across their bodies, words that sear their flesh when disobedience is even considered. Others are anointed with the blood of failed prototypes, baptized in the agony of their predecessors. Each forge world has its own style, its own madness. One might favor massive servitors built from dozens of corpses stitched together, a grotesque parody of unity. Another may craft spider-limbed horrors capable of climbing sheer walls and flaying enemies with whisper-thin monofilament whips. There are forge worlds that grow their servitors from egg-like growths harvested from corrupted biomasses, fed thoughts through dream rituals until they awaken with murderous purpose. And there are places where the forges themselves are alive, sentient machines that construct servitors autonomously, sometimes without direction, building for no reason other than the joy of creation. In the deepest layers beneath even the molten nerve lines and the echoing shrines exist the test chambers. Here, new types of servitors are trialed in controlled war zones, pitted against captured enemies, traitors, or even each other. Their behaviors are recorded by demon-bound cogitators, their screams translated into performance metrics. If a model fails, it is not deactivated, it is punished. Pain is a feedback tool. Suffering teaches. Some servitors, twisted by repeated failure, become deranged wrecks, still functional but wildly unpredictable. These are sometimes unleashed anyway, their madness weaponized. The forge worlds of the Dark Mechanicum are not stagnant. They are evolutionary crucibles, changing and mutating constantly. As new rituals are discovered, new pacts forged, new materials harvested from warp storms or demon realms, the process refines itself, or degrades into new levels of depravity. Some say the forge worlds themselves learn that the machine minds which oversee them are no longer simply AI, but something worse, entities grown from data and belief, thinking in ways no human mind can comprehend. And so the servitors march forth from these foundries, not as mere soldiers or tools, but as the culmination of a culture that has abandoned all restraint. Each one is a sermon in sinew, a prayer with a pulse, a machine that dreams only in blood. And as they deploy across the galaxy, grinding forward on rusted limbs, eyes aglow with false purpose, they bring with them not just death, but proof. Proof that the Dark Mechanicum has not just survived, but evolved. And that its forges are not dying, they are only beginning to sing. There are monsters so unique, so singular in purpose and madness that they cannot be replicated. Not because the Dark Mechanicum lacks the means, but because the act of replication would cheapen the art. These are the aberrants, the one-offs, the handcrafted horrors forged not by need, but by obsession. Each one is a manifesto in flesh and steel, a magnum opus of cruelty, a statement of belief from a magos too unhinged or too inspired to care about scale or function. They are servitors in only the loosest sense. In truth, they are avatars of individual madness, unrepeatable by design and unholy in their consequence. Some are forged for vengeance. A forge master whose son was killed by the Inquisition might spend decades constructing a single servitor, grown from the genetic material of the fallen child, laced with memory echoes, armed with weapons tailored to defeat that specific Inquisitor's retinue. The servitor may take the shape of the boy, or something far more grotesque, a bloated caricature of innocence, weeping warp blood, begging for recognition before unleashing its payload of reality-rending weaponry. Once its mission is complete, it might deactivate, or simply fall apart, its purpose fulfilled. Others are created as living art. The gallery of screams aboard the Warfane Omniphage Eternum is filled with servitors that serve no tactical function. One has a body made entirely of fingers, its own and others, grafted into a lattice that taps rhythmically on the deck. Another constantly shifts shape, its flesh mutating in response to ambient sound. It does not speak, only watches, weeping oil. These aberrants are revered not for what they do, but for what they are. They embody the creative impulse unchecked by morality or utility. They are not tools, they are expressions. There are also servitors designed to communicate, not with humans, but with entities no human should ever contact. These are the Vox Wraiths, aberrants built to interpret or translate warp phenomena into readable signals. Their mouths are fused shut, but their bodies hum with frequencies that cause nearby electronics to glitch, whisper, or weep blood. Some have their rib cages replaced with tuned resonance chambers, converting warp noise into choral songs. One is said to speak only in reversed High Gothic, and its words cause dreams to rot in the minds of those who hear it. Assassins, too, are forged as aberrants, but not the sleek killers of Imperial legend. These are blasphemies of precision and intimacy. One such unit, known only as Glass Widow, was crafted with skin made of reflective plasteel shards, her face a constantly shifting mimicry of her target's loved ones. She kills not with blades, but with words, mimetic phrases that cause aneurysms or simply erase identity from the victim's mind. Another, the null chirurgeon, is a floating horror whose limbs are surgical tools dipped in polonium and sin. It does not kill quickly, it rearranges. Aberrants are sometimes used for infiltration, but rarely in the expected ways. One unit, the Pilgrim of Wires, was engineered to believe it was a prophet. It wandered the underhives of Necromunda, preaching a gospel of unity and flesh-machine harmony. Entire cults formed around it. Only later did it activate, its spine splitting open into a signal tower, broadcasting warp lures that summoned demon hosts directly into the hearts of its congregation. It did not survive. But that was never the point. It was a seed, its death, a harvest. Then there are the aberrants whose purpose is unknown even to their creators. Some are the result of failed experiments that worked in unintended ways. Others are created in trance states, their makers overtaken by visions, compelled to build without understanding why. These constructs are often stored in vaults, guarded not for protection but out of fear. The Candlehead, for example, is a servitor with a head shaped like a wax taper, constantly melting but never consumed. It speaks in numbers that correspond to the birth dates of those nearby. It has never moved, and yet anyone who stays in its presence for longer than 13 minutes is never seen again. A rarer form of aberrant is the compositional servitor, units designed to create, not destroy. They sculpt, paint, or play music, though what they produce often drives observers to tears or madness. The most infamous of these, Melancholia 7, plays a harp made from human ribs, producing tones said to reflect the dying thoughts of those it was built from. It performs without audience, ceaselessly, until the strings decay and must be replaced, always by fresh material. These singular creations do not fit into war zones neatly. Some are deployed only in the final stages of a campaign, as symbols. Others are gifted to Chaos Lords as status pieces, their presence more intimidating than 1,000 soldiers. A few are sealed away after activation, considered too dangerous, even by their creators. It is said that somewhere in the screaming halls of Sycorax 9, an aberrant lies dormant. Its cortex programmed with a logic paradox so perfect that the moment it is perceived, it will erase reality in a 10-kilometer radius. What makes the aberrants most terrifying is not their power. It is their uniqueness. Each one is irreplaceable, unforgettable, and completely intentional. They are not accidents. They are not glitches. They are the soul of the Dark Mechanicum given form. Not standardized, not industrialized, but intimate. Personal. Worshipful. Each aberrant is a reflection of one heretic's dream or nightmare made manifest. And in a galaxy already drowning in war, that kind of ambition is the most dangerous weapon of all. Among the nightmarish creations of the Dark Mechanicum, there exists a category of constructs that blur the line between machine, servitor, and daemon engine so completely that even the most learned tech priests of the Imperium cannot classify them. The boundaries between Hellforged constructs and Chaos servitors are not lines. They are wounds, torn open by ambition and soaked in warp ichor. Within these wounds lie the crawling nightmares that define the fringe of chaos innovation. Constructs that think like machines, move like daemons, and remember, however faintly, what it once was to be human. To understand the divergence, one must first examine the core of their origin. A Chaos Servitor begins, at least in theory, from the same principle as an Imperial one. A human base, stripped of autonomy, augmented and purposed. But in the hands of the Dark Mechanicum, this base is twisted into something unholy. Flesh is fused with steel, but also with intention, demonic, ritualistic, heretical. The result is a creature that still carries remnants of its origin. It might scream, it might pray, it might weep. A Hellforged construct, however, is another thing entirely. It is not made from a man. It is made from a machine and a soul, or multiple souls. Hellforged units are typically built from Chaos Dreadnoughts, Hellbrutes, or Daemon engines. Massive war machines that require a sentient being to inhabit and suffer within. The pilot is bound, imprisoned inside the machine, their agony a fuel source, their rage the weapon that drives the construct. But where the line blurs is in the ritual process. Some Chaos Servitors are built using similar techniques, binding fragments of consciousness into a machine shell, not as pilots, but as components. Their thoughts become reflex subroutines. Their memories inform targeting protocols. A Hellbrute may contain a living Astartes, screaming in endless rage. A daemon servitor might contain the echo of a priest, forced to chant praises to the ruinous powers in corrupted binary, its voice now the weapon it once used to inspire. Some constructs are both. There are known examples where a chaos servitor, originally human, is elevated, infused with demonic power, enhanced with warp-bonded armor, and integrated into a hellforged shell. These hybrids are rare, but devastating. They possess the cruelty of a machine built for obedience and the intelligence of a mind twisted by both suffering and purpose. They are used as field commanders for lesser servitors, able to control swarms through vocalized thought links, or as anchor points in dark rituals, their presence stabilizing warp manifestations that would otherwise tear reality asunder. The telltale difference lies not in size or function, but in intent. A chaos servitor, no matter how grotesque, is still a tool. A hellforged construct is a prison. Its purpose is not just war, it is punishment. It is vengeance. It is an offering. Many are created from traitor Astartes who have failed their masters, interred in sarcophagi of metal and pain, their minds shattered and reassembled to obey. They no longer remember who they were, but their hatred survives. That hatred becomes the control interface, the raw code that fuels every motion. Hellforged constructs are also unique in their relationship with the warp. Where chaos servitors might be influenced by warp exposure, becoming unstable, mutated, or possessed, hellforged beings are often designed to act as warp conduits. Their chassis are inscribed with runes, their processors linked to warp-sensitive arrays, their every movement synchronized with fluctuations in the immaterium. Some can phase in and out of reality. Others leave trails of psychic feedback. Still others are fused with lesser demons that guide or corrupt their function mid-battle. There are dread examples of constructs that began as chaos servitors but evolved. Exposure to warp storms, overperformance in rituals, or simple proximity to a powerful demon can catalyze a transformation. Flesh bubbles and warps, metal sings, circuits rewrite themselves in blood and madness. The servitor becomes something more, something self-aware, not in the sense of sentience, but in hunger. These creatures are sometimes worshipped by their fellow constructs, especially in heretic cultures that embrace machine theism. A servitor that survives 10,000 battles, devours the souls of its victims, and begins to speak with its own voice is no longer just a unit. It is an icon. Conversely, there are hellforged constructs that degrade into servitor-like states. Their original minds dissolve, their demonic inhabitants flee or are exorcised, and what remains is a hollow shell, still functional, still dangerous, but directionless. These relics are often repurposed, fitted with command shackles and obedience sigils, returned to the field as war relics that serve without understanding, guided only by the last fragment of ritual left embedded in their structure. Such creatures are pitied by no one, but they are feared by all. In the forges of the dark Mechanicum, the distinction between these forms is not a matter of classification, it is a matter of reverence. Chaos servitors are the mortar. Hellforged constructs are the monoliths. One is expendable, the other is sacred, and yet both bleed, both scream, both are made from what once was human, or something worse. The next time a chaos warband charges the lines and something impossibly massive follows behind, a thing of rusted chains, moaning hymns in a dozen voices, eyes like shattered glass and limbs that glisten with ichor, ask yourself this: is it a machine? A daemon? A man? Or has it become something else entirely? In the galaxy of the dark Mechanicum, the answer is always yes. In the twisted hierarchies of the dark Mechanicum, servitors are not just tools, they are the spine of society. They till the bloody soil of demon-infested forge worlds, maintain the engines that breathe fire into war machines, carry the bodies of magi through corridors of pulsating steel, and whisper prayers to the warp in languages their shattered minds cannot comprehend. They are omnipresent, essential, and yet utterly expendable. But what separates this from the brutal pragmatism of the Imperium is the ritual, the reverence, and the danger that the dark Mechanicum servitor culture harbors in every moment of its function. Servitors are not granted freedom, but neither are they wholly enslaved in the traditional sense. In many forge enclaves, servitors are seen as reflections of their masters. Each one is a signature, a living sculpture of its creator's ideology. Some heretics design their servitors to mimic their own physical appearance, or to echo their mannerisms. Others go further, installing memory fragments of their own thoughts into servitor minds, creating an echo chamber of obedience that borders on narcissistic worship. These servitors act not just as laborers, but as extensions of the Mago's identity, functioning simultaneously as personal assistants, heralds, and body doubles. Entire castes of servitors exist in these societies, stratified by function, form, and faith. There are high-order servitors, known as cognos rites, trained through ritualistic neural programming to administer entire manufactura without direct oversight. They maintain energy flows, repair machinery, and even recite forge creeds to the machines in place of tech priests. These high-function servitors are sometimes revered by lesser ones, forming eerie congregations of mechanical devotion, where servitors gather around their superiors, twitching in synchronized prayer loops. But even the lowest servitor has a role. Trash collectors, organ harvesters, maintenance drones, these are not ignored. They are monitored constantly, not for efficiency, but for taint. Heretics fear contamination, both from rival ideologies and from uncontrolled warp exposure. Servitors are often inspected not just for functionality, but for signs of psychic resonance or behavioral drift. A janitor servitor that begins humming a forbidden tune might be a harmless glitch or the first sign of demonic infiltration. Paranoia is endemic, and any servitor showing unpredictable behavior is either dissected or repurposed into a more static role. Yet control is never perfect. Servitors do rebel, not out of intention, but corruption. Some Forge worlds maintain purge protocols, daily rituals where servitor populations are culled by percentage, regardless of performance. These rituals serve both as population control and spiritual offering, framed as necessary sacrifices to appease the machine spirits and chaos entities that lurk just beneath the surface of rationality. Some magi whisper that if they don't conduct the purge, the servitors begin to whisper to each other. Begin to learn. The Dark Mechanicum society is not built for servitors, but it is built through them. They are the invisible labor, the masked choir, the foundation upon which every heretical miracle stands. And yet, they are never fully trusted. Their every action is mediated by rituals. Their every command is layered through filters of control, loyalty, and sacrifice. Even their tools are sanctified, welding arms blessed with demon oil, data jacks inscribed with binding sigils, limbs forged from metals that remember screams. There are rumors of forge cults that have begun worshipping their servitors. These fringe sects believe the most perfected form of existence is the servitor state, devoid of ego, devoid of fear, existing only to fulfill function. They see in the servitor not a slave, but a saint, a being who has transcended the chaos of flesh by becoming pure utility. Some go so far as to voluntarily undergo servitorization, replacing their own cortex with obedience circuits while retaining full sensory input. These living martyrs become both leaders and symbols, proof that submission can be sacred. Conversely, there are magi who treat their servitors with artistic obsession. One forge master was known to compose operas in binary, uploaded directly into his servitors' minds so that they could sing as they worked. Another shaped every servitor with individualized aesthetics, some with glass faces, others covered in rotating glyphs, one even crafted entirely from the bones of extinct Xenos species. These creations are not just functional, they are status symbols, each one a testament to the Mago's creativity, cruelty, or theological fervor. Still, not all is reverent. There is mockery, too. Some heretics use servitors as living canvas for insults, engraving rival magi's failures into their flesh, designing units that constantly malfunction in ways that parody old schisms. A servitor might leak oil in a way that resembles a hated glyph or twitch in time with a forbidden chant. These are not errors, they are sabotage by ideology. The danger of this culture is obvious. When you normalize the weaponization of identity, of belief, of function, you create a society constantly on the brink of spiritual and physical collapse. And yet that brink is precisely where the Dark Mechanicum thrives. The servitor is not merely a machine. It is a mirror. A blank face reflecting the beliefs of its creator. A soul stripped bare and rebuilt into something useful, something sacred, something terrifying. In the end, the question of control is not whether the Dark Mechanicum can command its servitors. It is whether the servitors are still serving, or whether they have become the quiet foundation upon which the entire nightmare rests. Waiting, processing, learning, and dreaming in the binary tongue of forgotten gods. Beneath the smoke-choked heavens of the Forge Worlds, where flame and ash dance like spirits and the ground trembles under the rhythm of machinery, there is no end, only cycle. The creation of a servitor is not a beginning, nor is its destruction an end. It is a process, a loop of violation and purpose, of erasure and worship, of flesh unmade and reborn. The Dark Mechanicum does not see this as tragic, they see it as beautiful. The eternal cycle, creation, corruption, oblivion, is the very rhythm by which their society breathes. It is their prayer. Each servitor begins as something else, a prisoner, a body grown in a vat, a slave captured during a black crusade. It does not matter. What matters is that it becomes useful. This first transformation, the act of becoming, is a violation. The identity is stripped, the body reshaped, the mind broken and rebuilt. But that moment is also a sacrament. The heretic does not weep for what is lost. They rejoice in what is gained. A form with no ego, no contradiction, no fear. Just function, just will. Not its own, but its master's. But nothing remains untouched forever. Chaos is not stasis. Corruption seeps in, whether through exposure to warp energy, contact with demonic rituals, or simply the passage of time. Servitors begin to degrade, but not always physically. Some mutate. Others develop quirks, a twitch, a stutter, a new phrase whispered when alone. These changes are logged, celebrated, cataloged, because corruption is not failure in the Dark Mechanicum. It is evolution. The machine changes. The flesh adapts. The soul fragments and reforms. And through it all, the servitor continues to serve. Eventually, every servitor reaches a point of unreliability. Some go feral, attacking handlers, speaking in dead tongues, walking into the void and never returning. Others simply stop, frozen mid-task, as if some unspoken command had overwritten their function. Many are reprocessed, brought back to the forges, their components recycled, their memories wiped, their bones repurposed into new units. Others are sanctified, kept as relics, their corrupted forms revered as signs of divine madness. A few are released, set adrift in warp currents, or sent to cursed battlefields to die where they were born, in service. But even death is not the end. Corpses are fuel, minds are data, flesh is raw material, and so the cycle turns again. What was once a broken servitor becomes the casing for a new one. Memories are harvested, edited, stitched together to form new behavior patterns. The scream of one unit becomes the war cry of another. There are forge worlds where servitor production lines never stop, because they never truly begin. They feed on their own history. They grow from their own decay. This cycle is not hidden. It is celebrated. In many cults, the three stages of servitor existence, birth, corruption, oblivion, are personified as godlike avatars, lesser deities within the chaos pantheon. Entire rituals are built around these stages. Servitor creation is done to chanting. Their midlife corruption is observed with fascination, as acolytes record changes like prophets studying signs in the stars. Their deaths are funerals of fire and oil, sometimes followed by ritual consumption, where select heretics consume bioslurry made from obsolete units to inherit their knowledge. This is not simply madness, it is faith. The servitor is not just a machine, it is a metaphor. It is proof that purpose can survive identity, that function can transcend self, that even in the heart of corruption, something can be useful. That is the true heresy of the Dark Mechanicum, not just what they build, but why they build it. In every screeching limb, in every reprogrammed cortex, in every death and rebirth, they affirm a belief more terrible than any demon, that meaning does not come from the soul, it comes from design. And now, as these horrors spread through the galaxy, deployed across the stars in void ships made of iron and suffering, the question is not whether the Imperium can stop them, it is whether they understand them. Because the servitor is no longer just a slave, it is a sermon, a warning, a philosophy made flesh. The Dark Mechanicum is not trying to destroy humanity, they are trying to replace it with something better, something obedient, something eternal. If you followed this far into the abyss, through rust and ruin, perhaps you understand the terror now. The servitors of the Dark Mechanicum are not anomalies. They are inevitable. In the cycle of creation, corruption, and oblivion, there's only one thing constant, the forge. And from that forge, more will come. Always more. If this descent into the dark mechanisms of horror intrigued you, if you want to continue exploring the boundless, blasphemous depths of the Warhammer universe, then subscribe. Join us. We have so much more to show you.